What to read? I'm Gerard Saylor from the L.D. Fargo Public Library in beautiful downtown Lake Mills, Wisconsin. Here's a few books you might be interested in. First one up is by Andy McNab, Remote Control. This is actually a first-hand book by McNab, and it's a good one. McNab became famous because he was a member of the British Special Air Service during the First Gulf War, and his patrol in Iraq was caught by surprise. They ran off, got about maybe 40 miles away on foot, and then they were caught and went to prison. He wrote a book about it. Everybody was famous. But he teamed up with different ghostwriters, at least I assume he has, because the quality is kind of varied from book to book that's been done under his name. But this is the first one. It's pretty good. Kind of autobiographical. He uses a lot of the things that he learned in the SAS in his novels. And so the SAS troop that he was in, I mean, they're kind of super commandos, and at the same time they're spies, especially when they're working in Northern Ireland against the IRA. And so they learn all sorts of neat little tricks. Like, for instance, in this one, he at one point has to burglarize a business office, and he brings his Polaroid with him, and he takes pictures of everything before he even goes in the door to make sure that he can leave everything the way that it was and that nobody will know that he's there. But in this one, he plays a retired commando who is sent on an operation in the U.S., and he goes to visit a friend who's worked for the DEA, and the French family is completely massacred in their home, blood everywhere except for one young daughter about 5 years old who was hiding in a bunch of boxes. And McNab goes on a run with her. He's suspected of being the killer and this, that, and the other thing. It's a really good thriller, a lot of good action, and nice little touches like that about doing a burglary, and little things like he goes up against some bad guys, kind of the Men in Black type guys, and instead of buttons on their sport coats, they have Velcro so they can pull it open and get their weapon out really quick. Hey, tying into that is Defensive Handgunning, a treatise on handgun carry and use by Bill and Rehberg. He's from Wisconsin. He's not a local dude. He's up in, there's a picture there. He's from up in the Dells area. But this is a really neat, good, concise book, really well written. I think he did a really good job on this. It covers all the basics of handguns, shooting, stance, grip, sight alignment, loading, reloading, malfunctions, carrying the weapon, drawing it, tactics, shooting on the move, cover, using cover and concealment, and mindset, which is always really important. This is actually self-published, so it's not that many libraries, but you can certainly get it from here. It's really well done. And thirdly, Martin Cruz Smith has written 6 books featuring his detective Arkady Renko. The first one was Gorky Park, which came out in 1981. And the most recent one, I believe, is Stalin's Ghost, which came out last year, maybe the year before. But Arkady Renko, he's, like I said, a police detective in Moscow. And he's not a very tough guy. He's certainly durable. He gets beat up a lot. But he's more of a thinker, and I mean, there is some action in there. He can step up when needed, but these are really well plotted, good character novels. The settings are always really good, especially the Soviet setting in 1981. And another really good one is Wolves Eat Dogs, which I read recently, which is set in Chernobyl. Chernobyl is really interesting because the whole area is shut down, and there's like this outer ring where a bunch of scientists are allowed to stay for short periods of time and live there and do their research. And then there's kind of an inner area which is supposed to be completely abandoned. And so it's turned into this wildlife refuge because there's no people there except for a few squatters who either snuck back in or never really left and living out in the middle of the woods. But all of his novels have really good mysteries. They're really solid. You don't quite know what's going on. There's a lot of I want to say there's a lot of suspects, but it doesn't get confusing at all. There's just different choices, and they're all very, really solid. He does a really good job, but there's Wolves Eat Dogs, Gorky Park, Red Square, which was good. This was done by the time of the turnover of the Soviet Union to the Russian Republic. Havana Bay, where he goes to Cuba, and this is a really good one, great use of setting. Stalin's Ghost, which I haven't read, but I believe, if I remember correctly, it's set in the subway in Moscow. Yeah, you can figure it out. And Polar Star, this is another really good one. This is actually the second one in the series where he goes to work on a factory ship in the North Pacific that they reel in the fish and they gut them and freeze them, and there's a couple murders on board, and Arkady is drafted to help out. So, the Martin Cruz Smith series, and Glenn Rehberg, Defensive Handgunning, really good book. Even has illustrations. The illustrations are kind of grainy, I think because it was self-published. I bet if you want really good photographs, you have to pay extra. And anything down, remote control. This is a really good series. There's like 4 or 5 of them. There's one where he goes to the south of France, which is just, it's really good, really great setting, and the way he goes about explaining how they're following people around. Well, same kind of detail and really interesting information is in remote control as well. So, that's what to read.